Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining us on today's NCPD Live. Today we have with us Deacon Ed Schoener of the Diocese of Scranton, and who is a founding member of the Association of Catholic Mental Health Ministers. And just going to show a screen here just about, wrong one, about Deacon Ed's background. Deacon Ed was ordained a permanent deacon in 2004 and serves at St. Peter's Cathedral in the Diocese of Scranton. He is a founding member, as I said, of the Association of Catholic Mental Health Ministers and the Catholic Institute of Mental Health Ministry at the University of San Diego and the Scranton Mental Health Ministry. He serves on the board of the Council on Mental Illness of the National Catholic Partnership on Disability and on the board of Pathways to Promise. He earned a graduate degree in spiritual direction from the Aquinas Institute of Theology. And also Deacon Ed and his family and friends founded the Katie Foundation after his daughter Kathleen died by suicide in 2016. Her obituary went viral because it spoke to the needs and concerns of people who live with mental illness. Deacon Ed lives with his family in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And Deacon Ed, we're just going to now show a quick video that explains some of your background and a little bit about the Katie Foundation before we begin to talk about the Association of Catholic Mental Health Ministers.
Parishes are increasingly turning to the lay faithful for support. The diaconate has also increased in prevalence in recent decades.
Deacons have been a part of the church since the very beginning. In the early church, the deacons were given a ministry of service. That still really is an aspect of their ministry that lies at the heart of who and what they are.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark.
We're business people, government workers, lawyers, so we got our feet, so to speak, in both worlds. And part of our ministry is to bring Christ into the world, into our businesses, into our work lives, and also to bring those concerns of the work life and then the business back into the church in its own unique way. Being a husband, a father, a grandfather, gives you a perspective on life that maybe someone who's not a husband, a father, and a grandfather would have. So I understand the problems and the issues and the joys that come with all of that. So Katie was a beautiful, wonderful, vibrant girl. But like so many people, she became ill. She had bipolar disorder and she died by suicide. So often people with a mental illness are homeless, unemployed, not well taken care of, and there's a tremendous ministry there. And I think I know Christ wants to be with them. They're wounded, and Christ wants to heal their wounds, heal our wounds.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Deacon Ed, for coming on. I'm pretty excited that we have the opportunity to have you on today. This is an awesome program that you put together, and I'm really excited to see what it will be able to do for parishes in particular. So could you tell us just a little bit about your overall goals for the whole association?
Well, sure, and thanks for having me, Bob. And first thing I want to say, it's not simply me. There are many people. We hope to be many more to join us that are involved with us developing a ministry to people that live with a mental illness and those that support and love them throughout the church. So it's a growing ministry within the broader church. But our goals are, one, is to provide spiritual support to people that live with a mental illness. We don't provide therapy. We don't provide medical care. We provide, like all ministers, provide spiritual support. You don't have to be a deacon or a member of the clergy. You can, a lay person, anybody can. We all minister to each other. So that's the main goal of it, is to provide that type of spiritual support, because all too often people with a mental illness, in ways that are hard to understand, feel excluded from the church. The second goal is to provide spiritual support to those people who love them and support them. Quite often it's their parents, but their spouses, their friends, other people that are in their lives and are trying to support them as they learn to live with these illnesses. Third, it's the clergy and the broader church itself to give them the tools that they need to support and develop this ministry. And then finally, it's to the wider church, to the broader church community, to be better educated, see the gifts and talents and the things that people that live with a mental illness can bring to the church. There's many gifts that come with struggling and living with these illnesses that can benefit the broader church. So those are the four main goals of the association.
Great, thanks. I know a lot of your focus is on developing parish-based ministries, and it seems, if you could say this, that they're broken up in parish teams, ministry teams, and then chapters. But of course, the main work is done at the ministry team level. And so, could you just talk about how that is like the foundational kind of aspect? It seems.
Yep. That's exactly right. The foundational aspect is to bring parish mental health ministry and our biggest goal into every parish within the church, because that's where all of us are most touched by the church, is in our parishes. So it's not to be some sort of abstract ministry out there someplace in the Catholic world. It's to be in the parishes where people can talk to each other and support each other. And that's the primary organizing unit, is a mental health ministry in the parishes. Supporting that parish-based ministry would be larger chapters, which would be organized along the geographic boundaries of a diocese, where those mental health ministry teams could get together with each other and share their methods and the things that they're doing to grow and support this ministry with each other. And then we, of course, would have a national organization where we could get together nationally and perhaps even internationally to support each other. But like many other ministries within the church, St. Vincent de Paul, grief support ministries, you can go through the whole list of ministries within the church. I think it's time for this type of ministry to be developed within the church, and I think the Holy Spirit is moving us in that direction, to be more open to supporting a mental health ministry.
Great. Now, what would you say is the main activities or functions of the mental health ministry team, and how do they work in conjunction with the pastor or whatnot?
Well, the first thing is, it's important that you mention the pastor. The first thing is, of course, that it needs the support of the pastor. It's not something that a group of people would just go off and do on their own. It's very important that it have the support of the pastor and be an approved and recognized ministry within the parish. But the pastor doesn't have to do it all. The pastor needs to be aware of it and supporting it, but the team itself would be made up of probably a small group of people within the parish, and they would be available when someone perhaps comes to the priest or someone in the parish to provide general support and information on mental health and what resources are in the community. One of the other things that quite a few mental health ministry teams do is provide spiritual support groups, where people who live with a mental illness can get together with each other and talk about the illness, how it's affecting their spiritual life, their relationship with God, and be able to just talk about this in a very open way that sadly all too often you can't openly talk about. Hopefully someday that'll change. But right now, people who live with these illnesses can openly talk about their schizophrenia, their bouts with depression within these support groups. And then also support groups for where the parents come in and the other caregivers. Because I know, as someone who was a parent of someone that lived with a mental illness, it's hard to talk about the illness with other people who don't understand. So when your child attempts suicide, or your child's hospitalized with a psychosis, it's very helpful to be able to talk to other people who have experienced the same thing, and so that they can provide you with the emotional and spiritual support that we all need when we're going through difficult times like this.
Great. You talked about some of the, I think some of the awareness activities of the mental health ministry team. Do you want to talk a little bit like what resources might be out there right now for people who are considering like forming that team, just to, because they may be like, okay, we can do this, but what's there? Sure.
Yeah, but that's one of the main functions or purposes of our webpage, the Association of Catholic Mental Health Ministry webpage. There's ministry resources and other resources on the menu tab. You can go down. One of the primary resources is we have been working with the University of San Diego, and we're affiliated with the university. We've also founded an educational unit called the Catholic Institute for Mental Health Ministry. And we've supported a number of dioceses as they establish their ministry. And we've and you can get this on the webpage, but a Catholic Mental Health Ministry Guidebook, guidelines to start it up, what you need to do to get a ministry going. So it's spelled out in a nice, easy to read implementation manual, if you will. And then also on the webpage, we have different tools and aids, prayers. We have liturgical resources, to pray during the intercessions, maybe some guidelines for a pastor or a deacon who's preaching, homily tips on how to discuss this, different rites that can be employed during Mental Health Month or Suicide Prevention Month. There's all sorts of opportunities to bring this ministry into the liturgical life of a parish. And then finally, we have information on how to do education within the parish. For example, in Scranton, we had a series 4 weeks in a row, 2 hours in the evening, on what mental health is and how the church can support. And there's a deacon in Chicago, Tom Lambert, who's been involved with this for many years, if not decades now. And we have some of the resources that he has developed to provide this sort of education to the community. So yeah, go to our webpage, as they say.
Yeah, I'm browsing as we speak. So I'm browsing the resources section as we speak. Is that for the part you were talking about, the 4-week series, is that out there as well, or is that something new? Not on the
well, the 4-week series, I think we have someplace on the webpage you'd be able to find it. I don't know if you can find it immediately, but also, like I said, Deacon Tom Lambert has also developed a program of community education and awareness too. So if you work your way through the page, you'll be able to find those sort of things. And I'm always a phone call away, as they say too. Yep. Anyone can feel free to give me a call.
Let's talk about the different. So say I was interested and wanted to find out a little more, and actually trying to get back to the beginning. What would I, if I wanted to become a member, like, how would I go about that? And what
we have, again, on the webpage, there is a button there you'll see to become a member. So you can fill out a webpage form, and that would get to us. And then if there's a chapter in your particular area, we'd send you to the chairman of the chapter in your area. If not, you'd be a member at large, and we probably invite you to maybe think about starting a chapter in your area. The other thing I would point out too is that we're in the position where we can offer grants to folks that are looking to start a mental health ministry. There's always expenses associated with these things, such as development, at a minimum, brochures and other information just to get the word out that the ministry's starting, but also perhaps to bring in speakers. If you're really ambitious, maybe to employ, particularly at a diocesan level, think about a part-time employee to support at a diocesan level. So I'd encourage them to look for the resources themselves, the aids, but also if you really want to jump into this, there is grant money available to do this, both at a parish level and at a diocesan level, if your bishop would be interested in pursuing a broader ministry throughout the diocese. So we're in a position to support that too.
So somebody that was looking to do this at a broader level, I know you had mentioned there's some training available at the university. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the University of San Diego is developing a certificate program, an online program where you can take some training, and get a certificate of mental health ministry. The other training that's broadly available, it's more secular, it's called Mental Health First Aid. I'm certified to put on that program. I've done it in a number of parishes, and we also have other people involved with the ministry that can do this. That's a great program that helps people to understand what mental illness is, not to be afraid of it, but to understand it and to understand the different types of illnesses. And that's a great program. That's an 8-hour training program too. So I would encourage both of those, mental health first aid, and also in a couple months, the University of San Diego we'll have this online program for our certificate in mental health ministry.
It's great. And the first aid, how is that? How do you take that? Is that an online thing or at home?
Well, it's primarily an in-person training, but of course during this pandemic, that's not possible. We all hope in a few months this will be behind us. But I understand they have developed in the interim some online training, but it is primarily an in-person program. And I have gone to a number of parishes around the country, and like I said, there are people spread throughout the country that would be able to help with this sort of first aid training. And even if someone wasn't available, it's the sort of thing that maybe a grant could help with if you weren't able to get someone like me who's willing to do it for free.
Mm-hmm.
You might be able to provide support to get someone to do it.
The chapters, I know that this is kind of just getting going in a way, but it's so desperately needed that. So someone who was starting up a team, they may be the first one in their diocese, and then it may naturally kind of burgeon into a chapter, but not necessarily. And but could you talk a little bit about the relationship of how big a chapter would be and its relationship to the diocese?
Yeah, the chapter would be, as we're thinking right now, along the geographic boundaries of the diocese, but it wouldn't be a part of the diocese. Much like any other institute, like many other services do things similar to that. But it would be important that we have the support of the parish and the diocese, that the bishop be aware of it and has no objection to it. But we wouldn't be looking for funding from the diocese or anything along those lines. And again, it's simply a way to support each other within a diocese. So there's a couple different mental health ministry teams within the diocese. It's a way to encourage them to be aware of each other, support each other, and maybe put on diocesan-wide training and education programs. It's a network of support, is what the association is. It's a way to support each other. Because I know when I started the ministry a couple years ago here in Scranton, it was hard to find support and to find other people who were in this ministry. I found a couple people around the country, but there weren't many of us at the time. And we need to be aware of each other, and we need to be able to support each other. That's important, no matter what you're doing.
So, there's a now we all know of NAMI support groups. What would you say, which is where a lot of people go now, but what would you say is the main difference that you're looking at developing and having for people versus a NAMI support group? And, how are they similar? How would they be different?
Well, we are openly Catholic. We start with prayers. We ask Mary to be present to us during the time that we're together, and then we openly share about how Christ is with us in these trials and struggles and joys. There's not everything's bad. There's successes and there's things that go well too. But I would say our focus is spiritual and in particular Catholic. Now, anyone's welcome to come, and we have had people at our support group meetings that were not Catholic or maybe even no religion at all. But we are unabashedly Catholic in our approach. And then we always close with a prayer, and we encourage open discussion about God and person's spiritual life. Because sometimes when you're struggling with depression or hearing voices with schizophrenia, you need to be reassured that God's with you in the midst of all this. And you need to be assured that people who are experiencing this understand it, and that they can share their faith experiences. So it's a bit of a faith-sharing group also, besides NAMI, as you know, is a secular group and doesn't encourage this type of discussion. I don't think they shut it down if someone starts to talk about spiritual matters, but it's not the focus, whereas the focus of our ministry is spiritual support.
I just want to let everyone know that we will have a time for questions. If anyone has any questions or comments they would like to ask or share, they can just put them in the comment field of the Facebook. And Deacon Ed, what do you see as far as, just spinning it out, 5 years or so? What would you see as far as like a national presence or a national coordination of the chapters? What might that look like, or what might you hope that could look like?
Well, as you said, we're just getting started in this. We started the association in 2019. I and a couple other folks from around the country have a founding board. The other thing I do want to mention is that Auxiliary Bishop John Dolan from San Diego is our chaplain. He and his family have lived with mental illness. He lost 2 siblings to suicide, and so he understands the importance of spiritual support. So he's been very supportive. Nationally, the idea would be of working with the University of San Diego, provide training across the country. It would be good, and I certainly anticipate at some point that we would have a national gathering of ministers from around the country. We would also want to provide information in the United States Conference of Bishops. We work with groups such as the NCPD to get information out. So it's a large part of it is also breaking down the stigma and even the discrimination that people who live with mental illness can find within the church. The church is not immune from people within the church are not immune from exhibiting that kind of behavior, and we want to gently push that out of the church so that stigma and discrimination against people who live with mental illness is no longer there.
Sounds great. Well, it does not look like we have any questions right now. We did get a shout out from Mary Lynn Delfino from Scranton, just to say hi.
Oh. Hi, Mary.
But is there any final thoughts or anything maybe that we hadn't covered that maybe you want to speak to? Or do you run anything like this in Scranton with the small groups or anything like that? And how does that?
We do. We have a small group meeting in Scranton on the second, fourth Saturday of the month, and then once a month we meet with the parents. The other thing I think to maybe discuss a little bit is that there have been saints in the church who have who understand mental illness. Some that have more than likely lived with a mental illness, and most recently St. John Paul II spoke about mental illness during his time as Pope, during his pontificate, and he was very impressive in what he says, as he was in so many things. But one of the things he said is that Christ took all human suffering on himself, even mental illness. Pope John Paul II said Christ took mental illness on himself when he went to the cross. He took mental illness to the cross with him. So whoever suffers with mental illness always bears the image and likeness of God. I think that's an important image. I mean, one of the images that Mother Teresa often talked about was Christ's crown of thorns as being symbolic of mental illness. That the crown of thorns caused pain and suffering, but it did not define Christ, and it certainly did not define the resurrection. So Christ can overcome all of these things. Even mental illness is redeemed by Christ, and I think it's a good way to bring our sufferings to the cross with Christ, knowing that Christ is there with us and doesn't abandon any of us as we're struggling with the challenges and sufferings of living with a mental illness.
Amen. Okay, well, I'm going to show where they can find out more information and connect to make an application to become a member and things like that. And I just want to thank you for your time. And on the website, of course, I'm sure they can find out information how to contact you if they're looking for it to do so. But,
Yes.
Great. Well, thanks again, Deacon Ed. I really appreciate you coming on and telling us about this great ministry.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Bob.
You're welcome.